My name is Ted Wacker, and I am a plaintiff's attorney. I've been doing this about 30 years. I've got my own firm here in Newport Beach that's just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, and we represent plaintiffs in personal injury matters.
My name is Michelle Hemsath. I'm an associate here at the law offices of Ted B. Wacker. It's a boutique personal injury firm that handles mostly plaintiff personal injury.
Roberto Segura was an individual in his mid-50s. He was represented by another firm who brought the case to our firm for litigation. He was riding on a motor scooter, like a little Vespa motor scooter up in Pasadena. He worked as a security guard, and he was going to work at early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning. And another car, the defendant driver, going through this little side street up in Pasadena. He made a left turn on a green light, but he was in a yield zone, so he didn't yield to our client who was oncoming in his little Vespa. He struck our client, and our client suffered, pretty significant injuries.
He was taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital, suffered very severe injuries. He had fractures from essentially the top of his ribs all the way down to the bottom. He had what's called a flail chest from ribs 5 to 9. So that means when you breathe, instead of your rib cage going out like it normally does, it goes in to your lung. So he suffered some injuries to his lungs. He also had a problem with his spleen. It was bleeding into his abdominal cavity, so that was embolized, so essentially the blood stopped flowing to that part of his spleen. And he suffered some injuries to his knee, ankle, and spine.
The objective was to really prove liability, so we had to prove that the other party was at fault for failing to yield.
The defense took a very strong position regarding the value of the case, significantly undervaluing it and underestimating the injuries to my client.
It's kind of hard when you're going to go to trial and some guy looks like you and me. He looks like he's walking fine, but the underlying injury for him was such that, he fractured these ribs and then he lost some pulmonary function. And that's why we, in the end, hired DK Global, because it's one thing for somebody to say, oh, you have limited lung capacity, or that you lacerate a spleen. These are all internal injuries that a jury can't really get behind. Sometimes they really don't know what the spleen does, or, who cares if you had limited lung capacity, function.
So for example, the flail chest that I spoke about earlier, where the rib cage goes out, but the broken parts of the ribs go in towards the lung, causing injury to the lung. DK Global was able to provide an animation that demonstrated the injury to the lung as well as the broken ribs. And there was a subsequent plating of those ribs. So there was 42 screws that were placed in his ribs as well as a couple of plates. And so DK Global did a great job of demonstrating those injuries and the severity of having those types of materials put into your body.
What they're able to do is take what is really a one-dimensional piece of evidence, like a medical record or just a CAT scan. That's just a piece of paper that a jury sees, and maybe a doctor talks about it on the stand if you're going to trial, but when you can actually visualize it in 3D, working with DK Global is phenomenal.
This case resolved immediately before trial. We were right on the verge of expert depositions, but ultimately we're able to obtain a great settlement for Mr. Segura about a couple of weeks before the trial date.
The defense in this case wasn't even willing to pay the $1 million initially. They didn't even want to pay the underlying policy of $1 million. Then we brought the visual aids in, they see what's going on. All of a sudden their offers go to $2 million, $3 million, and finally we settle the case for just shy of $3.5 million. And a lot of that was due to DK Global's visual aids.